All right, perfect. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. If you're watching this video, it's because you want to learn about IULs, you want to learn about how to design illustrations and really what the ins and outs are to it. This is not going to be one of those nitty-gritty, detailed type of a trainings. However, I'm going to give you the fundamentals, and then we're going to work on doing some illustrations. Okay. Couple things about the IUL. You have to understand the mechanisms and how they work together to really design these. My first announcement that I want to make is that the IUL is not the solution for everybody. It's a phenomenal solution and it has to be designed appropriately, but it's not the solution for every single stinking person. It's just, quite frankly, not. Okay. I want to show you a little bit about how things work with each other so that you understand a little bit about how to design them. The first thing I want to talk about is overfunding. Here's the first rule of thumb to an IUL. You need a minimum 20 years of it being willing to be sat. Literally just let it season and grow before you start to see a positive profit. Does that mean that you can't see it sooner than 20 years? You can absolutely see it sooner than 20 years. Theoretically speaking, a properly designed IUL should give you back 100% of the money that you put in within your first 10 years. By the 10th year. By the 10th year. Unless it's like heavily max funded, you might get 100% of your basis, which is your money that you put in, by the 7th year, but definitely by the 10th year, you want the money to come back, which means if it takes 10 years for you to get back what you put in, then the next 10 years are all positive gains, which is why I say to you, by the 20th year is when you're going to start seeing that the policy is earning money, a decent amount to call it a decent investment. 30 years, you're killing it. 35 years or higher, you're annihilating it. I mean, this is why they say putting an IUL on a child is one of the best things you could possibly do, because you're giving your child, what, 40, 50, 60 years of compounding power with very small contributions. But here's the piece. Not everybody has, 35, 40 years to compound their money before retirement comes. Not everybody has that. Some people, unfortunately, they got started late, right? So what do you do when people get started late? The concept is called overfunding, right? Every illustration on IUL is going to have a word called target. The computer system will tell you when you run illustrations, here is the target. That target is the computer system's way of telling you, this is kind of the safe number to put in. You don't want to go lower than this, right? So here's my rule when I design IULs. It's very simple. 33 years of age, right? Or less. 33 years of age or less, okay? I run my IULs right at target. I have no problem running them right at target. The moment you go to 34 from 34 to 39 years of age, the moment you go from 34 to 39, I want to overfund by 30%. When you go from 40 to 49, I want to overfund by 40%. When you go from 50 to 59, I want to overfund by 50%. It's kind of simple. In your 40s, overfund by 40. In your 50s, overfund by 50. In your 30s, right around 34 or so, overfund by 30%. Anything below that, you can run it right at target. And no lie, in my opinion, anything over 60, you really genuinely shouldn't even be considering. You shouldn't be considering an IUL as an option. Okay. Now, I'm also going to give you another caveat. For 50-year-old clients, I have two rules with 50-year-olds when it comes to IULs. Number one, they've got to be okay having a minimum amount of insurance protection. Number one. And number two, they've got to be putting in $500 a month plus dollars. Doesn't even make sense if they're not. Because think about a 50-year-old, a 50-year-old that needs 20 years to grow his money means what? He's really not going to see a positive asset until he hits 70. You get what I'm saying? I don't want to have a conversation with a client about them tapping into this stuff when they hit 80. Like, that's not the goal. 70 is like a stretch to me. 60 to 65 is kind of the sweet spot for most middle Americans. 50 to 55 is wealth of America type conversations. So whenever I'm dealing with a 50-year-old wanting to put money into an IUL, I want to make sure, number one, it's minimum face value. They don't really need a lot of insurance, and they're going to be overfunding by a crap ton. And the monthly amount that they're going to be putting in is about $500. If it's not that, I have a hard time creating one. I'd be much more inclined in putting a GUL in place for that client and then having them start a Roth IRA on the side so that they still get lifetime income options with a Roth IRA indexed annuity, right? They still get tax-free earnings because of the Roth IRA. And the GUL gives them a guarantee of insurability up until age 95, 100, 105, however you design it. And some GUL companies even offer a return of premium option in there too with living benefits. So that's what I prefer to do before I lean into an IUL. But if I'm talking to somebody between, let's say, an adult, 18 to 39, 40, IUL all the way. IUL all the way. If I'm talking to somebody in their 40s, an IUL as well. However, my conversation with them is, listen, it's time to get serious. You don't have 30 years to blow any longer. You've got to make some serious decisions. And making a serious decision means being willing to put away more than $100, $150 a month. You've got to be talking $250, $300 a month for this to even play in as an asset. That's just kind of my rule of thumb. Okay. And it's kind of guidelines. I'm not going to tell you that it should be this way every single time, but this is kind of like my guidelines. And that this always kind of helps me when it comes to the creation of these IULs. That's my first rule. Second rule to an IUL. You have to understand this. Pretend this bucket is the face value. What's face value? The death benefit, right? Let's call this bucket $500,000 worth of death benefit. What do you put typically in a bucket? Water, right? Let's pretend these drops of water are your premium payments or cash, right? How much cash can you put in the bucket? Up until the rim. You can't go higher than the rim, right? If you put more money, more water in this bucket than it can hold, the water will spill over. If it spills over, it becomes a MEC. A MEC is a modified endowment contract, which means you're putting more money into this IUL than the IUL can hold, and then therefore you lose the tax-free benefits. It now becomes a taxable event, which is the worst thing you can possibly do to an IUL, right? So what's the correlation? The size of the insurance policy dictates how much money the person can put in. So that means if you get a small bucket, a small insurance policy, you're limited to how much you can put in, right? How much water do you want to put in the bucket when you first design it? And this is outside of the 60-year-old type of a scenario. I would even say outside of the 50-year-old type of scenario. We're talking about the 40-year-old or under. How much water do you want to put in the bucket when you first create it? You want to kind of fill the bucket up halfway. Halfway. Pretend halfway is target. That means if you're overfunding by 30 and 40 and 50%, you get what I'm saying? The more you overfund, the closer you get to the limit of how much money you can put in. You know what's one thing I don't want to ever do? I don't ever want to go under target. I don't ever want to do that. I also never want the bucket to be too big for the amount of money that they're putting in. That essentially puts you into this category here, a minimum funded bucket. So conceptually, hopefully you understand, the size of your insurance policy dictates how much money you can put into it. Target should always be your halfway filled line to the bucket. Under target means you're underfunding the plan, therefore you're not doing it justice. Okay. Overfunding is good, but you're reducing how much you can put into in the future. But you need to overfund when you're talking to 40s and 50-year-olds because they have to play catch up. Does that make sense, or are there any questions about this, conceptual illustration? Yes, no, maybe?
It makes sense.
Okay, good. Good, 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 good. All right, so let's get into some illustrations. Actually, you know what? The last piece I'll tell you is this. Insurance works like a seesaw, right? And I'm using this example when it comes to living benefits. Living benefits are a phenomenal thing, but just understand something. The better the living benefits, right? Seesaw's up here. The lower the cash accumulation. Why? Because there's an internal cost associated to those living benefits. There's an internal cost. So although there's no rider fee, there's no additional cost that the client has to pay to get this feature included, that cost has already been, factored into the price of the policy. So the greater the living benefits, the lower the cash accumulation, which means what? If you want high cash accumulation out of the policy, then you want to have the minimal amount of living benefits, right? What does that mean for the current platform that we have? Currently today, and I'm going to use today's date so that I can date this training, because this training might be out of date later on in the future if we add different companies. But currently today, right, which is what, May 17th, 2021, we've got 4 major companies that we're playing with inside of our platform. You've got Allianz, North American, right, Anico, and NLG. Out of the 4, which one has the best living benefits? Anybody want to take a stab at that?
NLG.
NLG, 100%. Hands down, the best living benefits. But historically as well too, they have the highest internal cost of insurance when you compare it to the rest. So because the cost of insurance is high, the accumulation doesn't grow as high or as fast as some of the other companies, right? Even if you run a term insurance quote on NLG, the exact same quote, you run that with American National, you run that with you'll see is substantially less in cost. Why? Because of the cost of insurance, right? Now, out of the 4, which one, again, this is just my opinion, right? So who's ever watching this video, you take it for face value. This is my opinion, this is my training, this is not, I'm not telling you to send this video to somebody and be like, hey, Tony said to do this. No, every single case should be done on a case-to-case basis. This is more of an 50-foot bird's eye view type of training, a conceptual training. In my opinion, out of the 4, the best cash accumulator is Allianz, which happens to be the one with the worst living benefits. All of them include terminal illness. All of them include the chronic illness, which is, AKA the long-term care type of a benefit, right? If you need access to money because you can't perform certain acts of daily living. But Allianz doesn't have critical illness. Allianz doesn't give you lump sum if you develop cancer, strokes, or heart attacks or anything like that. You see how it kind of correlates together? It doesn't have that benefit, yet it has the highest cash accumulation. Why? Because it can take more of the money and use it towards cash accumulation versus taking more of that money and using it towards the costs, right? Now, does that mean you shouldn't sell Allianz? Absolutely not. Allianz is a company that, in my opinion, should go attached with a companion policy. And the companion policy could be a term policy from another carrier that does offer living benefits, or a critical illness policy from, say, like a Mutual of Omaha. That way you have the cash accumulation and the death benefit in the Allianz, but then you've got the living benefits with your other attached policy. Then you kind of get the best of both worlds. But if you deal with someone that says, no, I want the absolute best living benefits no matter what, because maybe they work a high-risk profession, right? Then I'm going NLG all the way. Why would I use Anico and North American? Again, case-by-case basis. I write a lot of every one of them, but I'm just kind of giving you, again, conceptually why one over the other in reference to costs. Fair enough? Good? Okay. Let me share my screen here with you, and let's run some quick illustrations. Let me see here. They just updated this website, so let me first get it up and going, because they just updated it, and I want to make sure I go right to the illustration. Sales marketing. Where is it? Hang on one second. Hey, there it is. All right, good. Am I there? I'm there. Okay, good. So let me share the screen. Let's run some numbers. Let's run some numbers on let's first start with a 30-year-old. Then we'll move to a 40-year-old. And then we have time, we'll move into a 50-year-old. I'm going to show you how I design typically 90% of my 90% of my IULs. When it comes to permanent insurance, the competitor to IUL is a concept called whole life insurance. Something you need to know about the difference, the immediate difference between whole life and IUL. Whole life is an either or product, which means you either use the insurance death benefit and leave behind the cash that you've accumulated, or you use up the cash and have the death benefit reduced by the amount of cash that you used, but you can't get both. That's the biggest separator to IUL versus whole life. IUL can give both. You can use the cash and leave the insurance behind, and that's what I'm going to show you today, how I design it to give that, okay? So let's do a new case. Let's pick a state here. Let's pick Texas. All right. Notice Allianz has one product. That's how strong they are. This is an A+ superior product, the number one IUL in the market space. One product. They don't even offer term for this company. This is one product. There it is. Boom. Let's pick a Mr. Client. We're going to call him Mr. Client. All right. Let's make him, I don't know. Let me think here real quick. Is it 80, 87? So let me do it. We're going to do the whole thing. Here we go. Let's make him a little bit younger. Let's make him 34 years of age. 34-year-old male. Okay. Okay, right there. Perfect. It immediately jumps you into the illustrations. Okay. Let's make it a very healthy male, right? Then let's go ahead and play around with the policy. Let's go to plan. See, if you go right here, this is a brand new software, by the way, so I've only played with this once or twice. You might see me jump around a little bit here. There's the premium financing option, which, to be quite frank, I wouldn't even be running those. I don't even run those myself. I reach out directly to our back office and have them run premium financing. But let's go right into plan right here. And let's say, so if it's a 34-year-old, according to my rules, how much should the overfunding be?
30%.
30%. Let's say this client says to me, I want to put away $500 a month, right? So how I figure out the 30% is very simple. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take 500. I'm going to multiply that by 12, which is 6,000 a year. So 30% overfund, which means 70%, right? Because 70 plus 30 is 100. That means that 70% needs to be target. You get what I just did there? So if I take 6,000, I multiply it by 70%, 0.70, it tells me on my calculator that the target should be 4,200. So again, what did I do? Client says to me, I'm 34 years old, aged. I want to do $500 a month. 500 times 12 is 6,000 a year. So 6,000 has to be the total amount the client puts in, but 30% of it needs to be overfunded. 30% so that means 70% is target. So 70% of the 6,000 is 4,200. Simple. All right. So now let's play. Remember, target determines the size of the insurance. The greater the target, the greater the insurance. The lower the target, the lower the insurance. So right now at 250,000, the target is 2397. So what do I need to do to increase that target? Anybody?
Increase the amount of coverage.
Exactly. Increase the coverage. So let's go to 350. Oh, that's 35,000. Sorry. 35,000 takes it to 3,300. So we got to get to 4,200. So let's go to 420,000. Takes me to 4,027. Let's go to 450,000. I want to get as close to it as possible. There's 43, so that's a little bit over, no problem. Let's go to 440. 440 takes it to 4,219. That's pretty close. I'm not the person that it needs to be exact. That is pretty stinking close, okay? Now, what I'm going to do next, now I know what the face value is. What I'm going to do next is the death benefit. The death benefit is going to be increasing. I increase it from policy year 1 until age 70. When you put an A in front of the number, that's age. If you don't put the A, it's 70 years of the policy, right? So I want from policy year 1 to age 70 to be increasing, and then I want it to level off. Let me stop for a minute. What does increasing mean? Increasing means that the insurance itself is going to increase every year, dollar for dollar, proportionate to how much you accumulate in cash. That way, if you pass away, you leave your family with the death benefit and the cash. If you take out the cash, then you're just reducing that face value by the amount of cash you've taken out. And the only thing that what should be left is the original face value. Does that make sense? Take the analogy of the bucket and go, okay, so the bucket grows. And if the bucket grows, that means you can put more money in. That makes sense. But this is what solves for the differentiating factor between IUL and whole life. Whole life doesn't give you that option. Whole life says, I don't care how much cash you have in there, you're only going to leave behind the death benefit, and the cash stays with the family. Whereas IUL says your death benefit's going to grow according to the cash. That way you get to leave behind both, or use the cash while you're alive and then leave the face value left over. And I'll show you in the illustration. So the first thing I do is that 1 to age 70. Then over here, I level it. The reason I level it is because I don't anticipate anybody continuing to make payments into their IULs after 70. If this is a cash accumulation account, the longest someone should be putting money away into their savings is into their 70. After 70, they shouldn't be putting any more money in because they should be living retirement. So at that point, since there's no more money going in, there's no reason to keep increasing the bucket. You can level off the bucket. I'm going to level the bucket off from age 71, which would be the following year after this one, until M. M stands N for maturity. That's how I first design it. Tony, does that mean you design it this way 85%, 90% of the time? Yes. Yes. I've learned that repetition is the best thing you can be in this industry. Repetition. I've done this so much I can hit play and just do it blindly. But repetition is the way to do it. Okay, so there's that. Now let's talk about the dollar amount going in. The specific amount is $500 a month. Person's putting it in monthly, right? Now here's something I love to do with illustrations. Every 10 years, I like to increase the contribution. I want to show the client what it looks like if every 10 years they put more money in. Why is this policy able to do that? Because we're increasing the face value. The death benefit is increasing. Remember that bucket. As the bucket increases, you could put more money. If the bucket didn't increase and it was level, it'd be hard for me to put more money in the future. But because the bucket is increasing, I'm making room to put more money in. Does the client have to increase their contributions? No. This is just an illustration of what would happen if you do. What would happen if you do? So let's increase contributions from 1 to 10, first 10 years. And I'm gonna hit add row. Let's go back, let's go monthly again. And now instead of 500, let's do 750. And let's do that from policy year 11 to policy year 20. Let's add another row, another monthly payment. Now let's go from 750 to 1,000. You see how every 10 years you just go up by $250? That's all I'm doing. And then let's do that from year 21 until, let's go all the way to retirement until age 65. So policy year 21 until age 65. That's what I just told the computer system I want to do. Guess what's crazy? I don't play with anything else. Everything else stays the same. Tony, you don't touch a single other thing? I don't touch a single other thing. Very simple illustration. So now let's preview this. Let me see. Quick view. Includes approvals. Here we go. All right. So what's my target? 42.19, which is 70% of the money the person's putting in. The client's putting in what? $6,000 a year, which is $500 a month. This is overfunded by 30%. What do we as agents get paid on? We get paid on the target. Tony, are you kidding me? I just got a client to commit to doing $6,000, but you're only going to commission me on $4,200? Yes, because it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. And unfortunately, in this industry, sometimes there's agents that care more about their pocket than they do doing the right thing for the client. And you know what they would actually do? They would run this right at target. They would run this 100%. So the full 6,000 would be target, which means the death benefit would be higher, which means the cost of insurance is higher, and therefore it's not accumulating cash the way that it should. Does that mean I'm against running things at target? Absolutely not. A teenager, a child, a 20-year-old, a 30, a 31, 100% run it at target, because they've got so much time to compound their money that it makes sense to do. But once you start hitting that mid 30s, once you start hitting 40s and 50s, you've got to start overfunding and doing right by the client. So what do we got? 4,200 target, 6,000 right here going in. Now the live, die, quit, become disabled illustration is what I typically do here. I'm going to try to do it. It's a little bit hard to do it virtual, but I'm going to try to do it here. So just kind of bear with me for a moment. Right here, above the dollar sign, I mean above the premium payments, I would put a dollar sign right here. And by the way, if I'm meeting the client face-to-face, I print the illustration and I have the client do it. Why is that? Because by law, insurance agents cannot modify or adjust or edit anything inside of an illustration. But it doesn't say that the client can't. So I give the pen to the client. I have the client put a dollar sign right here so they understand what this column means. This column represents you putting money in. That's why the dollar sign's there, right? The live column represents cash value right here. I put an L right here for cash, for live. This is how much cash you have while you're alive that you can tap into. The die column, death benefit, I put a D right above here. This is what happens if you die. I put a Q right above cash value right here, because this is what happens if you quit. This is a cash surrender value. So it's the live, die, quit. And then the last thing I do is I put a big D right above here and I circle it, because the D stands for disability. What happens if I become disabled? Or AKA need a nurse to take care of me, right? I can tap into this face value as a form of living benefit, right? So that's the first thing that I do in the illustration. But let's go through the illustration row by row for a little bit here. 35 years of age, you put $6,000 in. At the end of that year, you've got $4,372 in cash value. But if you quit, we're getting nothing. $0. Your insurance started at $440,000. How much is it worth at the end of the year one? $444,372. Wait a minute. Why did it go up? And how much did it go up by? It went up exactly by $4,372. You remember when I was doing the illustration, I told the insurance policy to increase? It's increasing proportionate, which means if you add this number, 440, and you add this number, 4372, it equals this number. That's what it means. You know what's the first thing that I addressed? The downside to this product. Look at the downside. Mr. Klein, if you quit early, you get back nothing. But Tony, why do I have less in here the first year than what I put in? The difference between what you put in and what it's worth was your cost. That's your cost of insurance. That's the cost that you paid to have this death benefit. Second year, you do the same. Now you've got $9,000, but if you quit, we still don't give you nothing. Third year, you do the same. Now you've got $13,900, and guess what? We give you a little bit back. Do you see, Mr. Klein, how this is not in any way, shape, or form a short-term investment? You do this for less than 10 years, Mr. Klein, and I give you a guarantee you're going to get back less than what you put in. You understand that, Mr. Client? Yes, I do. Okay, perfect. I'm not short-term material. I'm not a side chick. I'm wifey. I'm the guy that's going to be there when you're in your 60s and 70s. I'm long-term. Okay? Let's fast forward a little bit. 10th year. By the 10th year, if you add up 6,000 times 10 years, that's $60,000. You've got 59,000 sitting in cash accumulation. That's kind of like your break-even mark. You have in cash value pretty much what you put in. Your insurance is now worth $499,000. Oh, why is that? Because this 440 plus this 59 is equal to this 499. 10th year. Now let's start scaling it. Look what happens here, Mr. Client. On the 11th year, you decide to start putting more money in. Why? Because you're making more money, you have less debts, your career is developed, you're putting more money in, so you increase it for another 10 more years. And by 20 years in, it's worth 222,221. How much money have you put in by the 20th year? Let's add it up. 9,000 for 10 years is 90,000 plus the original 60,000. You would have put in a total of 150,000 by the 20th year. If you add up all of these premium payments, look how much you have, 220,000. So now you've made about 70,000 in profit. Let's go another 10 more years. Another 10 more years. You're now 64 years of age, right? You're now 64 years of age. You would have put in another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 120,000 more, which means you've now put in 270,000 by the 30th year. How much do you have in cash? 575,000. See how you've doubled your money now? Mr. Klein, do you notice the live column is 575.82 and the quit column is the exact same as well, 575.82. Did you see that? So now you get back, if you quit, exactly what you've put in. You're not leaving anything behind. Whereas in the beginning, you see you're worth 24, but you only get back 15. You're worth 51, but you only get back 45. Why does it equal the exact same thing eventually? I mean, it hits break even right here. Right by the 13th year, you've got 96 in, it's worth 96. You know why? Because you've paid up the majority of the cost already. Now that doesn't mean that there's not going to be costs every single year, but the bulk of the cost has already been paid for. So now they're giving you 100% of the cash that you've been able to accumulate every single year moving forward. That's why by the time you hit retirement at 65, it's worth 676,000. And if you quit, you get the full 676,000. Now, when you hit retirement, Mr. Klein, I want you to know something. You can tap into this money two ways. If you take this lump sum money out, give me all my money, two things happen. Number one, you lose this insurance. You no longer have insurance. You take all the money, you're removing your relationship with the insurance company. And number two, you're going to pay capital gains tax on the difference between what you put in and what it's worth. Which, if you have to pay any kind of tax whatsoever, that's the right one, because guess what? That one is the lowest percentage. Earned income tax is 30% plus, capital gains tax is about 12%. Now, that's not what I advise you to do. What I advise you to do is to treat this like a pension and start taking money out on an annual basis. Not everything, because think about it. All of this money in your pocket doesn't make anything. Money in your pocket doesn't make interest. But if you take out what you need, everything else that stays in there, Mr. Client, just so you know, continues to earn an interest. I mean, look what happens here. When you hit retirement, you notice you're not putting any more money in, but yet look what's happening to your cash value. It's still growing every single year. I mean, you're earning from this year to this year, you just earned $46,000 worth of interest and you didn't put a single penny of your money in. Imagine if you could take out $46,000 a year tax-free for the rest of your life. That's interest, not even having tapped into your principal. That means, I mean, if you do the math to that, $46,000 a year times, let's say you live until 90, that's 25 years of your life. You would have taken out $1.15 million. You ready for this, Mr. Client? Tax-free. Tax-free. Out of your what? Out of your $250,000 worth of a contribution, you took out 1.1 million tax-free for yourself. Oh, and by the way, you still leave behind $1.1 million to your family tax-free. So if I could help you think with your last name versus your first name, what if just shy of $300,000 can give you 1.1 to you tax-free, 1.1 tax-free to your family? And knowing that if something happened to you prematurely, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 1 month after you get this policy, you could tap into that insurance money as a death benefit or as a long-term care need if you get sick and need a nurse to take care of you. What if? Understanding two things, Mr. Client. Number one, you've got to qualify for this. You don't get this just because you want it. You've got to qualify for this. And number two, Number two, you've got to be willing to pay yourself first and commit to a long-term contribution. Long-term, 10 years minimum. 10 years minimum. Does that make sense, Mr. Client? I do. Do you have any questions, Mr. Client? I don't. And if they have questions, break it down. Explain it to them. Now, mind you, I've already explained how indexing works. I already did that in my fact-finding meeting. What I just showed you right now is a closing meeting. In my fact-finding meeting, I figured out how much insurance they need. I figured out what their budget was. I explained to them what indexing works. I explained to them, how people invest into insurance company to generate tax-free money. And they said to me at the end of the first meeting, Tony, I can afford $500 a month. Can you show me what that looks like? I'm really interested. Let's say hypothetically that their dime analysis says that they need $750,000, but this one is only $440,000. You know what I do to offset? 750,000 minus 440 is what? Hang on, it's 310,000. You know what I do? I sell them a $310,000 term policy attached to this policy. So I sell them two policies because my objective is to meet their insurance needs. That's their dime analysis. Plus I need to meet their savings needs, which is their budget into their cash value accumulation plan. There it is. That's how I sell it. You know how I also tee them up for it? This is how I tee them up. The client says to me, I can afford $500 a month. Okay, Mr. Client, if I can meet your cash accumulation goals of growing money tax-free, and I can equally meet your $750,000 dime analysis need, but instead of it costing $500, it costs $540 or $550. Is that a deal breaker, or would that is that enough that you would still take action because I'm close to your budget? You know what 9 out of 10 people say? Tony, if you can meet both my insurance needs and my savings needs, and I told you 500, but it costs 550 instead, I'll do it. You know why I create that little margin? Because that little extra is the term insurance premiums. That little extra is the term insurance. And they've already given me a yes. That's called a trial close. I'm already getting them in yes mentality, closing mentality before I present this. And then when I close this, I tell them, you got to qualify. This isn't just given to you. My job is to fight for you. My job is to get this company to accept you in. You understand, the wealth of America are the ones who do this. They do this at $5 million, not $500 a month. So I can do this for you, but I need a couple things from you. Number one, I need to submit an application. Number two, I need your patience, because this could take 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks to approve. And by the way, my assistant is one of the best case managers in the market space. When she calls and asks you for something, that she needs something, my best advice to you is to get her the answer quickly, because that means she's talking directly to the company and she's close to getting an approval. And if you delay the answer, all you give that company the privilege to do is to poke and prod a little bit more in your application and ask more questions. And I don't think you want that. I want to get you approved. Now, can you be patient with me for the next 3 to 5 weeks? If I can get this approved on a scale of 1 to 10, what's the likelihood you're going to take this? 1, no way. 10, I'm in. I'm going to go to bat for you. But this only makes sense if you're ready to go to bat for yourself. What's the likelihood? Oh, no, I'm a 10. I'm in. You know why I want my clients that way? I want my clients thinking and feeling they need me, not the other way around. There's a very different mindset when the client feels they need you versus you needing them. None of my clients should ever feel like I need them. And I'm not saying this to be arrogant or egotistical. I'm saying it because what I bring to the table is a hell of a lot more valuable, which is insurance protection and retirement planning, than what they're bringing to the table, which is a commission. They're giving me a one-time commission. I'm giving them a retirement. They're giving me a one-time payment that might pay, a month, that might pay a bill or two. I'm giving them 25 years worth of income. And I'm giving them the peace of mind of protection. So who's giving more to who? I need them to feel like that. That's how they need to feel. That's how they need to feel. It's simple. Does anybody have any questions? Everybody's good? Okay.
Hey, Tony, it's Tanisha. I have a couple questions for you. So one, I just want to know if you're kind of, using psychology on them when you're talking about they have to qualify, or is it something actually beyond standard underwriting that they have to get through?
No, they genuinely have to qualify. Look, let me tell you guys something about Allianz. If the person doesn't make $50,000 a year or more, Allianz won't even look at them. Just so you know. This is for everybody. When you're doing a fact finder, if the person's not making $50,000 or more, Allianz won't even look at it. Won't. Don't even go to Allianz if they're making 40. I don't care if they're healthy. That's number one. Number two, they have to have the health to qualify. Number two. Number three, they have to have the budget to qualify. So whatever their salary is will dictate how much total amount of insurance they can get. We also got to look at their criminal record. We also got to look at their driving record. We also got to look at their history and their pattern of relocating jobs and relocating residencies. So there's definitely a qualification that they got to go through, which is why I ask for their patience. Does that make sense, Tanisha?
Yes, it does. And then a second question is, can you explain that row that says initial values, all those under there? I think I see like a single premium payment and all that. So
yeah, no problem. So initial face value is the initial amount of insurance. The initial amount was 440,000. And if you notice, it grows over here over time because the cash grows. Minimum payment, if the client has a bad year, a bad financial year, and they need to pay the minimum amount to keep the policy going, the minimum that they can pay is $42.60. Even though they're paying $6,000, the minimum is $42,1960. Okay. The maximum non-MEC means that the most they could pay on any given year is $13,245. They can't pay any more than that. Okay. So, and if they want to make a single payment, a one-time payment, it's $52,289.13. Now, I will tell you this preview is an agent preview. I don't even show this to the client. I show the client an actual illustration. And I go to the page that shows these numbers. And I will, and my last thing is this, for my technical people, you have to understand something. You're about 10% of the population. The other 90% is not technical. And if you get too technical with the 90%, you'll lose them. Because people prefer not to do business with something that they don't understand. So yes, there is such a thing as an overload of information. There is such a thing as an overload. Notice, I just shared year 1, 2, and 3, and then I fast forwarded to year 10, I fast forwarded to year 20, I then fast forwarded to year 30, and then I fast forwarded right to retirement. I didn't talk about interest loan crediting. I talked about the main important ones, which is what? Live, cash accumulation; die, death benefit; quit, cash surrender value; the big D up here for disabled, and then I put a $sign right here for the premiums. And they focus in on that because too much information will confuse them, and that confusion will prevent them from even doing anything else.
I have a question.
Go for it. Mike, I'll get you next. You're muted, so I was just able to read your lips. But let me get Nefertari, and then I'll get Mike.
So what happens if someone decides in 1 year to give that one single premium of 52,000 or whatnot? How does that affect the policy? There's
a chance it could become a MEC. So they pay in just as 52,000 just the first year, which is the insurance company's way of saying, hey, this is enough money, you know, based on interest rates to have this death benefit completely paid for. However, obviously you're not going to have this type of cash accumulation, because remember, the insurance company is always looking at this from an insurance side. We and the community look at it from a cash accumulation side. So 52,000 is the insurance company's way of saying, hey, if you put that, statistically, based on our current interest rates, this death benefit is now paid for. That's what it means. But chances are it becomes a MEC, meaning that the cash accumulation now is taxable. So I don't ever typically play around with this number. I won't. I'll be honest. I've had a few clients that said to me, hey, I just inherited, like I've had a couple clients that said to me, I inherited 200 grand, 300 grand. I want to put it into an IUL. You know what I do? I take the 200-300 grand, I put it into an immediate payout annuity. And I tell the annuity to pay it out in 7 years, and I fund an IUL over a 7-year period. Because 7 years is how many years you need to contribute into an IUL in order for it to still be tax-free, so it doesn't become a MEC. Which that is, again, that's very technical, which is a whole nother training that I would do with you guys to understand what MECing laws are, MECing rules are. Does that make sense, Nefertari?
Yeah. And then is there a way that you could ask the insurance or like hold carrier how it cannot become a MEC? Like let's say someone just wanted, like they just took out, or they just, let's just say somebody won the lottery and it wasn't that big, it was like $10,000, and they decided
Hmm.
to put to their policy. Can you call the carrier and and ask if that 10,000 will make this a MEC or not?
Yeah, so I was gonna switch over, but if you notice, it says logged out due to inactivity because I was presenting this for so long. But when you're running the illustration, 90% of companies have this little button called MEC avoidance, and you just check it, which means that the computer system will not allow it to become a MEC. And so what you would notice, if it's close to becoming a MEC, the premium payments will start dropping automatically. Even though you didn't tell the computer to drop payments, the computer system will do it to help it become a MEC. So if the client ever in the future wants to drop in a large lump sum, then what'll happen is we contact the company, tell the company, hey, the client wants to drop in 10 grand. Can you check to see if it's going to become a MEC? And the computer system will tell you, yes, you can do it, or no, you can't. So that way it's always protecting the client's tax liability. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. D'Amico, you had a question, brother. Go ahead and unmute yourself. No, you're still talking. I need you to hit the unmute button, my friend. Hang on, let me see if I can help you. Ask to unmute. You should see it on your screen now. No. Give you a couple minutes to see if, a couple seconds, see if you can figure that piece out. All right, I'll take some other questions while Mike sees if he can figure out the unmute button. Anybody got any other questions?
How about now?
There you go. What's up, Mike?
Well, first of all, thank you. Great presentation as always. I just want to add a couple real world things to what you've been saying because it's so great. So first of all, in the beginning, you were talking about doing joint business. As you know, Tone, I've done a huge amount of joint business. Probably 60, 70% of my business has been joint. With your presentation and joint business, here's what just occurred with me. 3 years ago, we did this exact same presentation. We presented 24,000 in premium. 29-year-old guy. He said, well, it's a little too steep. I'm going to go with 12. So we went with 12. Not a bad, bad case. I got a phone call. What's today? Monday. Must have been Wednesday or Thursday. My joint agent just wrote 36K. But it was all based on this presentation.
There you go.
And what the client saw is that exactly what we said was occurring in real time. And he said, rather than having 2.5 million when I'm 55, I'd like to have 5 or 6 million.
Yep.
So he's now paying $48,000 a premium a year.
Yep. Something
now,
that Mike
this is not. This is the power of what you just showed people.
Yeah. Something that Mike he mentioned in it, and it reminded me. When I typically show illustrations, just so you guys know, I'll show somebody 500, I'll show somebody 1,000 as well. And when I show it, I tell them, I say, listen, as long as you conceptually understand how this works, you can scale these numbers up or scale these numbers down, and they're going to proportionately adjust to what you're putting in. So my rule is very simple. When I'm working the middle American market, if someone tells me they can do $300 a month or more, I'm going to do a budget to make sure they can genuinely afford it. That monthly amount needs to be no more than 50% of their discretionary income after they've paid the bills, because I want to make sure that policy doesn't come back. And if I do a budget and I find out they've got a lot more money, I'll show them $500 and 1,000 every single time. Even though they tell me, hey, my budget, I can afford 300. I'll show them $500 a month, and then I'll show them 1,000. I'll say to them, listen, as long as you conceptually understand how this works, you can scale this down to the 300, or you could scale this up however it is you wish. You know what happens 9 times out of 10? They take the middle number. They wanted to do 300. I showed them 500 and 1,000. They take the middle number 500. You got some extra. You got an extra $200 a month in contribution.
Also,
That's
Tony,
what I do.
Tony,
Yes, sir.
about joint work and why I love joint work so much. Number one, you could be off. As good as you are, you could not have chemistry with the person. If you're doing joint business, you got 2 opportunities to have chemistry. Number 2, the client has a feeling that you know what you're doing because you have another agent there. But number 3, for personal gratification, people don't appreciate how good you are, Tone. I can sit here and listen to you because you're fantastic to listen to. So when you're playing to an audience that understands that, i.e. the other agent, you're even better. So joint work works.
Guys, I'm telling you guys right now, as I said earlier, hang on one second. Let me finish actually off this recording so I can continue with you guys. But anybody watching this recording, if you're interested in learning more about these IULs, how to strategize them, what it is to work at a company and organization like ours that focuses on training and development, right? I like to teach my guys how to bake bread before they run a bakery. Just reach out to me. My number is 239-784-1118.